AITA for revealing why my mom pays my brother's rent after my wife left me for him. I'm a 34-year-old man. My wife, Claire, is 29. Now, let me tell you about my brother, Adrian. Adrian is 2 years younger than me, but acts like he's 16. While I was working double shifts at the auto plant to save for a down payment on a house, he was finding himself through a series of failed artistic endeavors. Adrian has lived with our parents since dropping out of community college at 22. That's 10 years of free rent, free food, free utilities, and the free emotional labor of mom, who still does his laundry. In that decade, he's had maybe 8 jobs, none lasting more than 6 months. He always gets fired for being late, missing shifts, or having creative differences with management. But there's something charming about Adrian. He's 6'2", has an athletic build despite never working out, with dark hair and an easy smile. He's the kind of guy who can talk his way into and out of any situation. Women love his artistic sensitivity and his free spirit. Men want to be his friend because he seems fun and confident. My parents absolutely adore him. My mother, Marjorie, has coddled him since he was born. When we were kids, I'd get grounded for getting a B, while Adrian would get ice cream for bringing home a D with a teacher's note. Adrian is more creative, she would say. Not everyone learns the same way. When I saved up by mowing lawns to buy my first car, Mom insisted I share it with Adrian because family helps family. 6 months later, when he crashed it into a mailbox, guess who paid for the repairs? Dad, Henry, is no better. He runs a small plumbing business and always assumed I'd join him after high school. When I chose the auto plant because it offered better benefits and opportunities, he said I was taking the easy way out. But when Adrian showed zero interest in learning any trade, Dad just shrugged. Some people aren't built for physical labor. The double standard was legendary. When I bought my house, they visited exactly once. They spent the entire visit criticizing the old fixtures and saying the neighborhood was a bit rough. When Adrian moved back in with them after his latest breakup, Mom redecorated his room with new furniture and called it a fresh start. Family dinners were torture. They'd ask Adrian about his projects with genuine interest, while my actual career was treated like background noise. How's the factory going? Dad would ask in the same tone you'd use to inquire about a chronic illness. But if Adrian had some new, absurd business idea, tell us all about it. That sounds brilliant. The financial support was outrageous. I started keeping a tally after Claire pointed out how ridiculous it was. In 2023 alone, my parents gave Adrian $800 a month for his car payment and insurance, for $100 in spending money, $200 for a new laptop needed for freelance projects, $2,500 when he claimed his transmission blew, it was just low on fluid, and $800 for a social media marketing course he never finished. In total, over $18,000 in 1 year for a 32-year-old man with no dependents or disabilities. Meanwhile, when Claire and I asked for help with a $500 down payment on a new car after mine needed a major repair, Dad said, "You're adults now. It's time to handle your own finances." The favoritism was so obvious that even Claire noticed, and she had only been around my family for 7 years. It's like they see Adrian as their real son and you as an obligation, she'd say after particularly rough family dinners. But I kept my head down, kept working, and kept building my life, thinking that eventually, Adrian would grow up and my parents would see that steady responsibility is worth more than empty potential. I was wrong. The problems with Claire started about 18 months ago. She began making comments about our boring routine and how she never got a chance to be young. We got married when she was 24, and apparently, she felt she'd missed out on something. "Brooke is going on a trip to Costa Rica with her friends," she'd say. "Must be nice to have that freedom." "You can go on a trip if you want," I'd reply. "We have savings." "It's not about the money, Julian. It's about, I don't know, the energy, the excitement." Claire started spending more time with my family, especially during my weekend shifts when I was working overtime. She'd go to Sunday dinners at my parents' place, help Mom in the kitchen, and listen to Adrian talk about his newest projects. I thought it was a good thing that she was getting along with my family. I was an idiot. The first red flag was when Claire started echoing Adrian's opinions about my job. "Maybe you should think about doing something more creative," she suggested. "Adrian says you have so much potential you're wasting at the plant." Adrian has never held a job for more than 6 months. "That's because he hasn't found his calling yet," she'd say. There's a difference between giving up and knowing when to move on to something better. That was Adrian's philosophy. It seemed, never commit to anything long enough to face consequences or take responsibility. Claire was buying into it. The second red flag was when she began defending Adrian's lifestyle in our conversations. I'd complain about his latest drama. He'd been fired from a coffee shop for being consistently late, and Claire would say things like, "At least he's chasing his dreams." Not everyone can accept being stuck in the same place forever. Trapped? I got promoted twice last year. I mean, trapped creatively and spiritually, she'd clarify. Adrian is growing as a person. Yes, growing. In his sense of entitlement and his audacity with each passing month. The final red flag was when Claire started volunteering to help Adrian with his projects. She'd go to my parents' house to help him edit videos or brainstorm business ideas. It was always when I was working late or had a weekend shift. I should have seen it coming, but I trusted her. I trusted him. I trusted that blood meant something and that marriage meant more. Last Christmas, everything came to a head. We were at my parents' for dinner when Adrian announced his latest scheme, starting a podcast about authentic living and breaking free from societal expectations. He needed $2,000 for professional equipment and a website. Before anyone could say anything, Claire chimed in. "That sounds amazing, Adrian. You'd be so great at that. You have such a unique perspective on life." Mom immediately reached for her purse. "Of course, sweetie. Your father and I can help you with the startup costs." I couldn't take it anymore. "Are you serious? $2,000 for a podcast? You can literally start one with your phone." Adrian looked hurt. "It's about quality, Julian. If you're going to do something, do it right. Like all your other projects that you did right for a few months and then abandoned." The table went silent. Dad's face darkened. "Julian, that's out of line." "Oh, is it? How much money have you given him in the last 5 years?" "I bet it's more than a lot of people make in a year." Mom started to cry. "Why are you so cruel to your brother? He's trying to build something." Claire put her hand on Adrian's arm. "Don't listen to him, Adrian. Some people just don't understand vision." And that's when I knew. The way she touched him. The way she looked at him, as if he were some misunderstood genius instead of a 32-year-old man living off his elderly parents' money. I didn't say another word that night. I finished dinner, helped clean up, and we went home. Claire was silent the entire ride back. 2 weeks later, she sat me down in the living room and dropped the bomb. "Julian, I need to talk to you about us." My stomach sank. "What about us?" "I've been thinking a lot about our marriage, about our future, about what I want out of life." She took a deep breath. "I think we want different things." "What things?" "You're content with your job, your routine, your small goals." "There's nothing wrong with that, but I need more. I need growth, excitement, someone who challenges me to be better. And you don't think I do that?" "Julian, you haven't changed in the 7 years I've known you. Same job, same house, same weekend every weekend. It's all the same. I thought you liked stability." "I thought I did, too, but I've realized there's a difference between stability and stagnation." I already knew where this was going. "Is there someone else?" Claire's eyes filled with those manipulative kinds of tears. "It's not what you think. It's just that Adrian and I have been talking a lot lately, and he's helped me realize that I've been settling, that I deserve to be with someone who shares my values about growth and potential and living authentically." "Adrian," I said flatly. "He's been a really good friend to me during this difficult time. He understands what I'm going through." "Since when?" "It's not what you think." "Since when, Claire?" "We kissed once last month." "But that's not why I'm leaving you. I'm leaving you because I've realized we're not compatible long-term." "One kiss." "Right. So you're leaving me for my unemployed brother who lives with his parents." "I'm leaving you for someone who has vision and passion, who isn't afraid to take risks. Someone who sees life as an adventure, not a checklist of responsibilities. Someone whose rent is paid by his mother." Her face hardened. "You're being cruel." "I'm being accurate." Claire moved out the next week. She didn't go far, moving straight into my parents' house, where Adrian graciously offered to help her through this transition. How convenient. My parents' reaction was exactly what you'd expect. When I called them to tell them what happened, my mother's first words were, "What did you do to push her away?" Apparently, I worked too much and didn't have enough vision. "Julian, marriage takes work from both sides. Maybe this is an opportunity for you to reflect." "Reflect?" "Mom, She left me for Adrian. They're just supporting each other through a difficult time. Don't make it ugly. Dad was worse. When I went to their house to pick up some things Claire had forgotten, he pulled me aside. He said, "I know this is hard, son, but sometimes people grow apart. You can't force someone to be happy." She was living in my house, driving a car I helped pay for, and now she's sleeping with my brother in your basement. Watch your language. And whatever is happening between Claire and Adrian is their business. Family is family, Julian. We don't abandon each other over relationship drama. Relationship drama? Dad, she was my wife. And Adrian is my son. So am I. I'm not taking sides. But they already had. Adrian was still living there rent-free, bringing his new girlfriend, my ex-wife, into their home. And I was getting lectures about being mature. The next few months were hell. Claire and Adrian made no secret of their relationship. They went to family events together. Adrian would bring her to Sunday dinners, and my parents treated it like the most natural thing in the world. You know, they really complement each other. Mom told me one day when I stopped by to drop off Dad's birthday present. Claire brings out Adrian's responsible side, and he brings out her adventurous spirit. What responsible side? The man has never paid a bill in his adult life. He's been helping your father with the business lately, taking on more responsibilities, Mom said. I later found out that helping with the business meant answering the phone 2 days a week while Dad did the actual work. The worst part was watching Claire transform into Adrian's biggest fan. She would post on social media about his art projects and how inspiring it was to see someone live their truth. She got a job at a high-end salon. She started dressing differently, talking differently. She was suddenly into hiking, photography, and craft beer, all of Adrian's hobbies she had never cared for when we were together. Her Instagram was a highlight reel of photos at art galleries he dragged her to, organic markets, and indie concerts, with captions about authentic love, finding your person, and being grateful for this journey. Claire looked happier in those pictures than she ever had in all the years she was with me. Meanwhile, I was working extra shifts just to afford the mortgage alone, eating frozen dinners, and enduring the pitying looks from relatives who thought I should just get over it. Adrian, for his part, was loving every minute of it. He finally had something I wanted, something he could take from me. At family gatherings, he'd make little digs about some people being too rigid to understand a real connection. Claire would giggle and squeeze his hand. 6 months into their relationship, Adrian announced they were moving in together. Not into a place of their own, of course. Claire would be moving into the basement apartment my parents had fixed up for them, complete with new furniture, fresh paint, and a kitchenette Mom had installed so they could have privacy. The same parents who told me I needed to handle my own finances when I asked for help with a car down payment had just spent $8,000 remodeling their basement for my ex-wife and my parasite brother. I'd had enough. I hired a private investigator. I know how it sounds, but something wasn't right. Adrian had no job, no savings, no income. And yet, he was somehow taking Claire on weekend getaways, buying her jewelry, and paying for expensive dinners. The man couldn't afford his car insurance 6 months ago, and now he was playing the part of a sugar daddy. I needed to know where the money was coming from. The PI, Detective Cole Reynolds, was a retired cop who specialized in financial investigations. It cost me $5,000, but it was worth every penny for what he uncovered. It took Detective Reynolds 3 weeks to piece together Adrian's finances. He discovered that my deadbeat brother had been receiving monthly payments of $2,000 for the last 4 years, not from our parents. The money was coming from a shell company that traced back to a private account in my mother's name. But here was the interesting part. The payments were always accompanied by documentation. The wire transfers included scanned documents, photos, and sometimes even video files. Detective Reynolds couldn't access the content, but the pattern was clear. Adrian was being paid for something, and he had leverage to make sure the payments continued. This looks like blackmail, Detective Reynolds told me as he handed over his report. Someone is paying your brother to keep quiet about something. The question was, what? Detective Reynolds had also tracked Adrian's spending. The weekend trips with Claire weren't cheap. $500 hotel rooms, $200 dinners, $1,000 shopping sprees. Since getting with Claire, Adrian had spent over $15,000 on their relationship, money that couldn't have come from his odd jobs or my parents' allowance. I confronted my mother first. Mom, We need to talk about Adrian's finances. She was in the kitchen baking cookies for a church event, keeping her hands busy, avoiding my eyes. What about them? Where is he getting the money for all these trips with Claire? The gifts, the dinners? You and Dad don't give him that much. I don't know what you're talking about. I know about the shell company, Mom. The monthly payments. $2,000 every month for 4 years. That's almost $100,000. She dropped the mixing spoon. Julian, you need to stay out of things that don't concern you. My brother blackmailing my mother doesn't concern me. It very much concerns me. Tears started to well up in her eyes. You don't understand? It's complicated. Then make it simple for me. That's when she broke down and told me everything. For years ago, Dad had an affair. Not a one-night stand, but a full-blown 6-month relationship with a client whose house he was remodeling. The woman, Elise, was also going through a divorce. Dad would go to her house to work and end up staying for hours. Mom found out when Elise's ex-husband called the house, threatening to expose the affair during their custody battle. Apparently, Elise had been foolish enough to mention my dad's name during one of their arguments. The affair ended. Dad begged for forgiveness, and Mom decided to save their marriage. They went to counseling, renewed their vows, the whole reconciliation process. But Adrian had overheard the call from Elise's ex-husband, and being Adrian, he saw an opportunity. He came to me a week later. Mom sobbed. He said he would keep quiet about your father's affair, but he needed help getting on his feet. He promised it would just be temporary, until he found his path. So you've been paying him blackmail money for 4 years. It's not blackmail, she said through tears. It's helping our son while protecting our family. Mom, he is literally accepting money in exchange for keeping quiet about damaging information. That is the definition of blackmail. If word got out about your father's affair, it would destroy his business. All those clients from church, the reputation he's built, we'd lose everything. And instead, you've lost $100,000 to your own son. She had no answer for that. But I wasn't done. If Adrian was dumb enough to blackmail Mom, he was probably dumb enough to be sloppy. I knew Adrian was careless with his phone security, using the same password for everything and never logging out of accounts on shared computers. Over the next week, I made several trips to my parents' house when I knew he and Claire were out, using their computer to access the accounts Adrian had left open. What I found was worse than I imagined. Adrian hadn't just stumbled upon Dad's affair, he had been documenting it. There were photos of Dad's work truck parked outside Elise's house, screenshots of text messages between them that Adrian had somehow gained access to, and even a recording of a phone call where Dad was making plans to meet Elise at a hotel. My brother had been playing private investigator, building a case against our father as if he were gathering evidence for a divorce attorney. But the most damning thing I found was recent messages between Adrian and Claire from 2 months before she left me. Adrian, trust me. This is going to work out perfectly. Julian is too boring to fight for you anyway. Claire, I feel guilty about lying to him. Adrian, you're not lying to him. You're protecting yourself. Besides, when you see how good life can be with someone who has resources, you'll forget all about that suburban mediocrity. Claire, are your parents really not suspicious about the money? Adrian, they think I'm finally getting my life together. Mom is so proud that I can afford to treat my girlfriend right. Claire, it's a lot of money, and if they find out where it's really from. Adrian, they won't. And even if they did, what are they going to do? Cut off the golden child? They'd rather pay me than see their precious reputation destroyed. Claire, I love that you're so smart about these things. Julian never thinks ahead like you do. Adrian, that's the difference between us. I see opportunities, he sees problems. They had been planning this for months. Claire didn't leave me because of some sudden realization about personal growth. She left me because Adrian convinced her he was rich, and she chose to be with someone who could fund her lifestyle fantasies. And Adrian was paying for that relationship with blackmail money. I printed everything, every message, every photo, every bank record Detective Reynolds had discovered. I put together a file that would make a prosecutor weep with joy. Then I called a family meeting. I told everyone I had something important to share and to meet me at my parents' house on Sunday after church. Mom assumed I was finally ready to make peace with Adrian and Claire. Dad thought I was going to announce I was moving. Adrian and Claire probably thought I was going to give them my blessing or make some pathetic gesture. They had no idea what was coming. I arrived at 2 p.m. with a briefcase and a satisfied smile. They were all sitting in the living room. Mom, Dad, Adrian, and Claire, together on the couch like a united front against me. "Thanks for coming," I said, placing the briefcase on the coffee table. "I want to share some information I've discovered about the family's finances." Dad frowned. "What kind of information?" I opened the briefcase and pulled out Detective Reynolds' report. "You see, I hired a private investigator to look into Adrian's sources of income, and we found some very interesting patterns." Adrian went pale. "You did what?" "I did. See, I couldn't understand how an unemployed man could afford $15,000 worth of dates in 6 months. So I had someone trace the money." I handed Dad the bank records showing the monthly payments from Mom's shell company to Adrian. "What the hell is this, Marjorie?" Dad demanded. "I can explain," Mom started. "No, she doesn't need to," I interrupted. "I already found the explanation." I pulled out the printouts of the text messages between Adrian and Claire and read them aloud as Claire's face went white as a sheet. Then I pulled out the photos and recordings Adrian had made of Dad's affair. "So this is what's been going on for 4 years," I announced with a fake smile. "Adrian has been blackmailing Mom to keep Dad's affair a secret. Mom has been paying him $24,000 a year for his silence. And Adrian used that money to steal my wife by convincing her he was financially successful." The room exploded. Dad lunged at Adrian. "You've been blackmailing your mother?" Adrian scrambled backward, terrified. "It wasn't blackmail. She offered to help me. I have recordings of you threatening to expose the affair if they stopped paying," I said calmly. "That is literally the definition of blackmail." Claire was sobbing. "You told me you were saving money from freelance work." "I was protecting the family," Adrian yelled. "If I hadn't kept quiet, Dad's business would have been ruined." "Kept quiet for a price," Dad roared. "You extorted your own mother. Mom was a complete wreck. I just wanted to keep the family together by paying our son not to destroy our marriage." Dad turned to her. "Marjorie, do you hear how insane that sounds? You were the one who had the affair," she shrieked. That's when Claire found her voice. "Adrian, you lied to me. About everything. The money, your plans, your character. I left my husband for a man who's been blackmailing his own mother." "Baby, let me explain." "Explain what?" "That you're a criminal who steals from the elderly? That our entire relationship was funded by extortion money." Adrian tried to grab her arm. "It's not stealing if it's family money." I couldn't help but laugh. "Family money? Adrian, you literally threatened to destroy Dad's reputation unless Mom paid you. That's not family money. That's criminal proceeds." "Shut up, Julian," Adrian screamed. "This is all your fault. If you had just minded your own business." "If I'd minded my own business, you'd still be blackmailing our parents and lying to my ex-wife." "Sorry to interrupt your felony." That's when Dad completely lost it. 40 years of enabling his son came crashing down at once. "Get out," he boomed. "Get out of my house now." "Dad, please, no. You are a thief and a liar. And I am done with you." "Done." Claire was already grabbing her purse. "I can't be here. I can't be a part of this." She ran out the front door, leaving Adrian behind. "Claire, wait. Let me explain." But she was completely done. She got in her car and drove off while Adrian stood on the front lawn screaming her name like a deranged ex-boyfriend. When he came back inside, Dad was on the phone with the bank, freezing the account that had been funding Adrian's blackmail operation. "Dad, you can't do this to me." "Watch me," he responded coldly. "I'll tell everyone about the affair." Dad hung up the phone and smiled a chillingly calm smile. "Go ahead. Tell everyone how you blackmailed your mother over your father's affair. See how that works out for you." Adrian looked around, desperate. Mom was crying into her hands. I was packing my evidence back into my briefcase. Dad, meanwhile, was on his computer, removing Adrian from the family phone plan. "You can't just kick me out." "Where am I supposed to go?" "That is no longer my problem," Dad said. "You have 1 hour to pack your things." 1 hour? I've lived here for 10 years. And you've been a criminal for 4 of them. 1 hour. I stayed to watch Adrian pack, partly to make sure he didn't steal anything else, but mostly because I wanted to watch him face his first real consequences. It was pathetic. He threw clothes into trash bags while whining about how unfair it all was and how we didn't understand what he'd been through. When Mom tried to slip him $500 in cash, Dad stepped in, took it, and threw it into the fireplace. Not another dime. Adrian tried one last manipulation. "Fine, I'll leave. But when I'm homeless and starving, you remember that you chose Julian's revenge over your own son's well-being. I'm choosing consequences over continued enabling, Dad shot back, something I should have done 20 years ago. After Adrian was gone, my parents and I had the most honest conversation we'd had in decades. Dad apologized for the favoritism. He acknowledged how unfairly I had been treated. I thought I was helping him find his way. I was just making him weaker. Mom admitted she had been enabling Adrian out of guilt. I knew he was manipulating me, but I told myself it was temporary. I didn't want to face what he had really become. For years, Mom. For years of paying him to be quiet about something that wasn't even your fault. I was so ashamed, she said. Your father's affair nearly destroyed our marriage. And then Adrian made it seem like he was going to destroy it all over again. Dad shook his head. That affair was the biggest mistake of my life. But paying him to keep quiet just gave him power over us, over the whole family. What are you going to do now? I asked him. Dad squared his shoulders. I'm going to call Elise's ex-husband and tell him the truth. Then I'm calling my business insurance and my lawyer. If it comes out, we'll face it with honesty. And Adrian is no longer our problem. He's 32 years old and just lost his free ride. It's time to see what he's really made of. The fallout was swift and brutal. 3 days later, Claire showed up at my house, crying and begging for forgiveness. Apparently, she'd spent those 3 days in a hotel thinking about everything that had happened. Julian, I am so sorry. I was so wrong about everything. Yes, you were. Adrian lied to me about everything. His money, his plans, his character. I thought I was trading up, choosing someone with more potential, but I actually traded down to a criminal. A criminal who stole from his elderly mother. I feel so stupid and so guilty. I threw away 5 years of marriage for a fantasy. Yes, you did. She tried everything. Tears, promises to change, vows that she had learned her lesson and would never be so foolish again. But I was completely done. Claire, you didn't leave me because of some epiphany about incompatibility. You left me because you thought Adrian had money and status. Now you know the money was stolen and the status was fake. But I realize now that what we had was real. We had a steady income, a house, a future, and I threw it all away for someone more exciting. Well, congratulations, I told her. You got the excitement of dating a blackmailer. The divorce was finalized 4 months later. Claire had to find her own lawyer, as she couldn't afford one after losing her sugar daddy. She tried to claim half the house, but since her name wasn't on the deed and she had abandoned the marriage for another man, she got next to nothing. Adrian, meanwhile, was living that authentic life he preached so much about. Last I heard, he was couch surfing with friends and working at a gas station. His social media content shifted from inspirational quotes about following your dreams to bitter rants about toxic families and people who don't understand loyalty. He tried to contact me once, about 6 months after he was kicked out. He left a voicemail saying he wanted to rebuild our relationship and that we should move past this misunderstanding. I deleted it without replying. Claire made a few more attempts at reconciliation, but I was busy rebuilding my life. I started dating a nurse named Tessa, who thinks my manufacturing job is stable and respectable. It's funny how refreshing it is to be with someone who appreciates consistency over chaos. My parents and I are closer now than we have been in years. Dad's affair did become public. Elise's ex-husband was petty enough to spread the story among their social circle. But Dad weathered the storm by being honest about his mistakes and rebuilding trust with his clients through steady, quality work. He lost some business at first, but he also gained respect for handling the situation with dignity instead of continuing to pay blackmail money. It turned out that most people can forgive a mistake more easily than they can respect a covered-up lie. I should have just told the truth from the start, Dad admitted during one of our weekly lunches. It would have saved us $100,000 and 4 years of living under Adrian's thumb. Mom started therapy to deal with her guilt and her patterns of enabling. She's learned how to say no, a skill she never developed with Adrian. When he showed up at Christmas asking for a small loan to get back on his feet, she turned him away. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, she told me, but also the most necessary. If you liked it, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.